I'm Bri, a professional chef and hunter. I left my job as a culinary chef instructor to follow my passion for the outdoors. Now I'm using my talent in the kitchen to develop the most amazing wild game recipes. Join me as I travel across America to bring the wilderness to table. In this episode, venison is the star. I'm going to start it off with a venison bone broth onion soup served with French bread and melted Gruyere cheese that's bubbly and gooey and delicious. And for our entree, we're moving on to Venison Wellington, a wild game take on a classic dish. Then we're serving that with roasted asparagus and fresh Hollandaise sauce. Then for dessert, we're moving on to one of my best brownie recipes ever. We're topping that with chocolate ganache and espresso whipped cream. This deer was harvested in the beautiful backwoods of Georgia, and this was actually my first bow hunt. So this was something really special for me. Let me show you how to make a delicious venison broth onion soup. I like to use all parts of the animal, and for this I have made homemade venison stock out of roasted venison bones, and today I'm going to use that for my French onion soup. So to get started, we're going to julienne our onion. If y'all don't know what a julienne is, it's a thin slice of onions. We want our onions to be in nice little thin slices so that when we eat them, because they are the main star of this soup, we want them to be in perfect, pretty little bites. We don't want to eat diced onions, so we're going to do julienne, and I'm going to show you what a julienne cut looks like. A julienne is so simple to do. It's a 1/4 inch thin slices. So we're just going to start by slicing thin little ones. I'm going to show you what it looks like. See how thin, and you can almost see through them? They're almost translucent. That's exactly what we want, and that's a perfect julienne cut. Now I'm going to julienne all my onions, all 4 of my Vidalia onions, to go into my soup. I like using Vidalia onions, 1, because they're in season, and 2, they have an amazing flavor. They're sweet, but not overpowering and not pungent. They're just beautiful. Again, the choice of onions in your onion soup is really important. Why? Because onions are the star of the dish. And if we put an onion that's too powerful, well then all your guests are gonna be leaving with some majorly bad breath, right? We don't really want that. So we're going to use Vidalia onions. If you can't get Vidalia onions, sweet onions are a great alternative to onion soup, which I highly recommend. So I'm just going to move these off into my pot while I finish the other onions. This soup is really easy to make, which is why I love it. And look at how many onions are in there. We do have a lot. It seems like an overload on onions, but trust me, it's not. They're all going to shrink down, and it's going to really melt, and we're going to need all of these onions in order to achieve the soup consistency that we want. I'm going to add some butter to my pot. I'm going to get the heat on to medium-high heat, and I want these onions to caramelize to nice and golden brown. That golden brown is going to give us intense flavor in our soup, so I really want that. And again, we're going to season with salt. Always season salt. Always season your onions with salt, because salt helps to draw out the moisture of those onions, and the lack of moisture helps caramelization. So if we had a lot of water in your onions, we're never going to achieve that brown color that we want. Now I'm going to give these onions a stir. I want to mix in that butter all in those onions so that they all get coated with some butter. And I'm actually also going to include some olive oil in there. I want the olive oil to help grease up those onions as well. Plus, the olive oil is going to give us really good flavor. The taste, the earthiness of that olive oil is going to pair nicely with our venison broth, so it all works. Now, I'm going to let those caramelize. And I'm gonna add some black pepper because I always wanna season every layer as I go. I got some black pepper. And now my secret ingredient to my onion soup, it may not be a secret, but I'm adding a dash of sugar. Sugar is gonna help give us some caramel flavor. Plus, it's going to help balance the acidity. You always want to have balanced flavors. You don't want anything to be too acidic, too salty, and sugar is what really helps balance all those flavors and makes them come together. So now we're just going to let those sit and get caramel, and then we'll finish off our soup. So our onions have been simmering in the pot now, and look how golden and delicious they are. They look fabulous. Now we're gonna take our white wine and we're gonna deglaze the pan and we're gonna scrape off the fond, which is all those caramelized parts on there. We always wanna scrape the bottom of our pan. So now, see, you can hear that? We're gonna scrape that off. Those are gonna add flavor to our sauce. We're gonna let that white wine reduce and it's going to burn off a little bit of that alcohol. But look how beautiful our soup base has already gotten. Oh my goodness, it's so delicious and it smells divine in here. I wish y'all could smell this. We need smell-o-vision so that y'all can smell onions. Now we are ready for the venison broth. I made this homemade with the venison bones for the previous fall's harvest. So this is really special to me. I remember getting this deer with my bow, actually, and boy, was it hot that day. Oh my gosh, I think I lost 10 pounds just in sweat going after that one young buck. But I got him, and it was well worth it. In fact, he was the only deer I managed to harvest last fall. It was a really tricky season. But now I am serving my beautiful venison onion soup, and I'm such a happy camper. This is why I hunt. This is why I do it right here. And the smell is so good. Now I'm gonna add some aromatics to my soup. I'm gonna add 2 bay leaves, and I'm gonna add about 6 sprigs of fresh thyme. Always fresh herbs. And I'm gonna give that a little swirl around here. And I'm sure y'all can guess what I'm gonna do next, right? For those of you that said season, you got it, A+ for you. I'm gonna season with some salt and season with some pepper. And I'm just gonna give that a swirl now. I'm going to put a little hint of acidity in there as well. I'm gonna do homemade red wine vinegar. I actually made this myself, but the red wine vinegar gives a great depth of flavor, an unctuousness, and the acidity from it is going to pair very nicely with our onions. So just a dash of that. Give that a little whirl. And now the hard part comes. We have to let it sit. We can't eat it right now. I mean, you could, but we're gonna let all those flavors develop first. So I'm just gonna let this simmer about medium heat, and I'm gonna let it simmer for 30 to 40 minutes. I really want those flavors to develop, and I really want a nice, beautiful, rich, deep brown color in my soup. So I'm gonna get that going, and then I'll show you how I top my onion soup. So our onion soup has been simmering for about 40 minutes, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Now we're gonna put the finishing touches on it. I've got this beautiful baguette of French bread, and I'm going to slice it in about 1/4 inch, maybe a tiny bit bigger than a 1/4 inch slices. And I'm going to top my onion soup with these beautiful slices. Then I'm gonna top that with a lot of Gruyere cheese. It's gonna be so yummy and so decadent. So these might be slightly larger than what I need, so I'll just cut them in half so they can fit my bowls, just like this. Beautiful. Look at that. This is gonna be so yummy. I can't wait. I've got my bowls for my onion soup. Get my ladle. I'm gonna ladle the soup into the bowls. Oh my goodness, look at that, y'all. That color is so amazing. I just love it. That broth It makes me feel so proud to serve this broth because I know how hard I've worked for this soup. So I'm so happy to be able to serve this. Push that in there. Fill my other one. If you happen to see a bay leaf in there, just pluck it out. See, here's a little thyme. Just pluck it out and throw it away. It's no big deal. We're gonna fill our bowl almost all the way to the top. We do wanna save room for the crusty bread that I like to call the croutons of the soup. Now I'm gonna take my French bread, place it right on top. I do want the liquid to soak up into my bread because it's gonna be nice and moist. Oh my gosh, when you spoon into the soup. Now I'm gonna top it with my Gruyere cheese. And if you know me, you do know that I love cheese. Don't be afraid of the cheese. I actually like when the cheese goes around the edge because we're going to put this under the broiler. I do already have my broiler all heated up. So all you need to do is set your broiler to high if you have settings, or about 400 degrees if your broiler goes by degrees. So I'm gonna continue putting cheese on, just like this. And now we're gonna get our onion soup under the broiler to get all nice and bubbly. My venison onion soup looks amazing, and this is the true essence of wilderness to table. I've harvested the venison myself, and now it's gracing my table, and I just can't wait to dig in. Y'all are gonna love my recipe for venison French onion soup. Wilderness to Table is brought to you by Now we're going to start on our Venison Wellington. To get it started, we're going to add a little bit of olive oil to our pan and the butter. I like the combination of olive oil and butter. Medium-high heat. Add in our butter. Get that all melted in. And we're going to sweat some shallots as soon as this is all melted and together. We're going to create a mushroom duxelle. A mushroom duxelle is basically a mushroom paste, and it is going to get enrobed with it's going to wrap around our venison Wellington actually. It's going to add a very savory, earthy element to our venison Wellington, and we have prosciutto, which is going to add that amazing saltiness. So now that our pan is getting hot, we're going to add our shallots in. Then, of course, because we always season with salt and pepper, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Then we're going to stir those shallots around. Now we're going to add in a little bit of garlic, because garlic makes everything taste better too. Get that going. Now that our shallots are sweating nicely and our garlic is doing beautiful, and you can smell that heavenly combination, we're going to add in our chopped mushrooms. It may look like a lot, again, but it's not. It's going to shrink down, and it's going to create a wonderful paste for our Wellington. We're going to get that all mixed in. We want the mushrooms to release all their water so that they're nice and dry and they don't make our Wellington soggy. So be sure you cook your mushroom duxelles enough because we don't want water in the pan. We want them to be nice and dried out. We're going to let that go. So while that, I'm just going to spread it out all evenly. So while that is going, we're gonna do something pretty awesome to our venison right now. So, right here, I have a venison backstrap and I have a venison tenderloin. Generally, a Wellington is made with a fillet of beef, which is really thick. And sometimes when you're hunting, you don't always get the largest buck. I happened to get a buck that was not as big as I had thought when I was hunting in the fall. So in order to make my beef or my venison Wellington beefed up, so to speak, I am going to use trans-sodium glutamate. Trans-sodium glutamate is basically meat glue. It helps bind two pieces of meat together. It interacts with the meat's proteins and it will make them stick together. It's an all-natural product. It's safe to use. It's kind of like a chef's secret, but I guess it's not a secret anymore because y'all can use it too. You can find trans-sodium glutamate on places like Amazon or restaurant kitchen stores, things like that. So all I'm gonna do, it takes a very little, you don't need a lot. All I'm gonna do is lightly sprinkle it like fairy-like pixie dust over my back strap. I'm gonna do that. Just a little of that trans-sodium glutamate. Then I'm going to place my tenderloin right on top. Then when I place my Wellington, my venison on top of the prosciutto and I wrap it up in the plastic wrap and make it a sausage-like, it's gonna stay together. So when we cut it into it, the meats don't fall apart and it will uphold. So we want it to cook evenly. The trans-sodium glutamate is going to help it cook evenly, just like a beef Wellington would. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna leave this set. I'm just gonna give it one last push together. We're gonna let that set while our mushroom duxelles finish. I'm gonna push this to the side. Then, as you can see, our mushrooms have released their water. Now we just wanna continue cooking them until all that water gets evaporated, because that is what's gonna make our Wellington soggy, and we don't want soggy Wellingtons. So our duxelle is looking beautiful. The water has evaporated. And now I'm going to add a little bit of fresh chives just to brighten the dish up. Plus it looks really pretty. I'm gonna give that a whirl. And then I'm gonna turn off my heat. Just mix those chives in one last time. Make sure it's all coated. Perfect, and that is our mushroom duxelle. It looks beautiful. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and assemble our Wellingtons. I'm gonna get some plastic wrap I have over here. I'm gonna do one long piece like this, actually. We'll go this way, it'll make life a little easier. I'm gonna cut that off. Then, I'm going to take my slices of prosciutto and I'm gonna lay them down on this plastic wrap. So I probably need about, I'd say 6 slices for this little tenderloin and backstrap. Lay them down nice and evenly. This is gonna provide the outer layer for our Wellington. And it's gonna add this amazing saltiness, like I said before. Prosciutto is just so tasty when you add it into your cooked dishes. It's so good, and it's gonna create such a beautiful filling for our Wellington. One more slice. I wanna make sure my full tenderloin is covered. Then we're gonna place our duxelles all across the prosciutto. Just like this, a nice even layer. Just all the way across. A nice even layer so that when we cook it and we bake it and we cut into it, it's gonna look so pretty. You're gonna see that layer of prosciutto, the layer of duxelles, and that beautiful venison on the inside. So we're going to spread that all around. Nice and evenly, just like that. Then we are going to use this pastry brush and brush Dijon mustard all over our backstrap and tenderloin. I'm just gonna move this. This is gonna be added flavor, and it's a classic ingredient for Wellington. So we are going to use that as well. Just a nice coating. And I'll get the other side once I place it down on the duxelles. So I'm gonna place it down just like this. And then I'm gonna finish brushing it with more Dijon mustard. A light coating, really quick. Voila. Then we're gonna wrap it. I'm gonna use the plastic wrap towards my benefit, and I'm gonna push. I'm gonna roll, pushing my Wellington over, and then I'm gonna tuck at the same time as I'm rolling it. So tucking that plastic wrap because I want it to be nice and tight. Nice and tight. So I'm rolling it as tight as I can. Now the ends, we're gonna crimp the ends together like this. And I'm gonna roll it just like that. And see how we've created this beautiful sausage-like Wellington now? Now this is going to chill in the refrigerator. We want it to chill in the refrigerator for at least 45 minutes because we want it to hold its shape. So I'm gonna get this in the refrigerator and then we're gonna finish it off. Now that our venison Wellington is chilling in the refrigerator, we're gonna go ahead and start our sides. We're gonna do asparagus with hollandaise sauce. So we're gonna start by trimming our asparagus. The end parts are really dense and stringy and they're really not delicious. So I just trim those off. This is a super easy recipe. Now I'm just gonna spread my asparagus spears all along the cutting board. I'm gonna bring my sheet tray up here. Then I'm going to sprinkle them with olive oil, just like this. Then I'm going to season them with salt and pepper, just like that, a little bit more. Then I'm gonna do some pepper. And now I'm going to roast these in the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. And while I'm here, I'm going to grab my melted butter for my hollandaise sauce. So, hollandaise can be a tricky sauce because it's an emulsion. It's emulsifying with the egg yolks and the butter. But I have found that it's super easy to do it in a blender instead of sitting there and whisking by hand. So I'm going to show you how easy it is. I have 5 egg yolks that I'm placing into my blender. Then I'm going to season it with salt and pepper. Then I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice right in there. That's where the flavor of this hollandaise sauce is going to come from, is that lemon. Well, and the butter. Duh. Then I'm going to take this out because I want to pour my butter into the blender. Then I'm going to turn this on. Before I start this, I want to tell you, I'm going to drizzle in my butter because when I drizzle in my butter into the egg yolks, that's what's going to form the emulsion and that's what's going to give us that thick, beautiful, airy-like texture for our hollandaise sauce. So now, I'll get this going. Then we're going to gently pour the butter in, slowly. We don't want it all at once. We're going to get that going. Then I'm going to speed it up just a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn the blender off, and I'm going to add a pinch of cayenne just for a hint of heat. And then I'm going to briefly blend it again. That's it. In a matter of seconds, you have mastered one of the French mother sauces. And look at that. It's so beautiful and creamy, and this is gonna go great on top of our roasted asparagus. So now that our venison Wellington has been chilling in the refrigerator, I'm gonna wrap it in puff pastry. So now I'm gonna flour my board just a little bit. I just don't want the puff pastry to stick, so I'm gonna get it all over my board. Move my puff pastry to the center. I'm going to take a small rolling pin and roll it out because I want to make sure that it fits our Wellington nice and tightly. That looks about right. I'll just give it one more push to the sides. Now I'm going to unwrap our Wellington. Look at how beautiful it looks all together. So now I'm going to wrap it like this and like this. Actually, to seal it, I'm going to take a little bit of egg wash right along here. This is just egg yolks mixed together with a fork. Nothing fancy. Then I'm going to tightly wrap my puff around it. That will seal it up. Then I'm going to turn it over, twist the ends. I like to just twist until the dough comes off. I like the rustic look to it. I'm just going to pull the excess and then kind of tuck in the end just like that. Then I'm going to do it with the other side. Now that we've finished wrapping our Wellington in the puff pastry, I'm going to re-wrap it in plastic wrap again because we want it to chill again. We want that puff pastry to chill. And the reason we do is because there's butter in puff pastry, and we want that butter to be cold when it goes into the oven, because essentially when the butter melts, it's going to release steam, and that steam is going to cause that puff pastry to puff up. So if it was warm like it is now, it's not going to puff up, it's going to melt, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to get this rolled up. I'm going to grab a paring knife, cut this off just like that, roll the ends up just like a sausage again. So now we're going to get our Wellington into the refrigerator to chill for 30 minutes. So our Wellington has been chilling in the refrigerator for over 30 minutes. Now I'm going to get it out of the wrapper and we're going to get it ready to go in the oven. So now just unwrap it. Look at this beauty. It's so beautiful. Okay, so now I'm going to get it onto my baking sheet. I've just lined it with a Silpat so it won't stick. Then I'm going to brush it with some egg yolk, just like this. Get it really good. The egg yolk is going to give it a really good golden brown color, which I think is so pretty on Wellingtons. So we're just going to brush it all over. Get it good. Get this side a little bit more. One more over here. Don't forget the ends. Don't forget the ends. Okay, and now for the fun part, I like to take my paring knife and run a few scores through it just to make it look pretty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do one little line down the middle and little curves. Now I'm just going to turn my cutting board and do them the same way. Now when it bakes, it's going to have a really pretty design to it. So now I'm going to get this into the oven. It's set at 400 degrees and it's going to bake for about 25 to 30 minutes. Let's get it into the oven. I just pulled my asparagus out of the oven. Now it's time to pull my venison Wellington out. Let's go get it. Oh my goodness, look at that. It's sheer perfection. I am going to let this rest for 20 minutes and then we're going to do a final plating. Now that our Wellington is finished, I'm finally going to slice into it and we're gonna put our dish all together. Oh my goodness. This is looking beautiful. This is a great size Wellington for 2 people to share. Look at this, y'all. I'm just gonna give you a shot of the inside. Look at how amazing that looks. Yum! Now I'm gonna show you how I plate it. I'm gonna get a bed of my asparagus down on the plate, just like this. Then I'm gonna spoon our hollandaise sauce right over it. I'm just gonna give it a little stir. You always wanna put your sauce on the bottom whenever you have anything with a crust. Why? Because you're gonna make that crust soggy, and nobody wants to eat soggy crust. So now I'm going to take 2 slices of our Venison Wellington and place them down. Y'all, there you have it. My Venison Wellington with roasted asparagus and hollandaise sauce. The smell is so overwhelming, I can't even take it anymore. Oh my goodness. This is one of my favorite dishes of all times. Oh my goodness. And the venison is so tender. And the mushrooms are earthy and the puff pastry is cooked perfectly. I'm savoring it. Y'all are just gonna love this Wellington. So we finished our entree. Now it's on to my favorite part, dessert. And I'm gonna make the most beautiful, decadent brownies you've ever tasted. And they're super easy, but I will tell you a story. I developed this recipe on accident. I was making a chocolate cake and I accidentally forgot to put the leavening agents because I was chasing my toddler, and voila, I ended up with one of the best brownie recipes I've probably ever made. So that's how this came about. It's pretty funny. All I'm gonna do is dump all my ingredients into the bowl and give it a slight stir to slightly combine them. If you overwork brownie batter, they get really dense. So I'm just adding all-purpose flour right now. Then I'm gonna go ahead and add my sugar. And then I have a little bit of baking powder, which I'm gonna add to this as well. Some vanilla. I like the vanilla bean paste to be, as a matter of fact. That's what I'm using right now. A hint of salt because chocolate and salt go really well together. And then my cocoa powder right into the bowl. And my eggs. See how easy this is? It probably takes you longer to get the ingredients together than it does to make the brownies. Then I have melted butter, but before I add that in, I'm actually going to just give this all a stir and get it almost combined, and then I'm gonna add my butter. Let's get this combined, work this. Okay, perfect. Now I'm gonna add my melted butter. And I'm just gonna mix this till it's just combined, not overworking. We don't want to incorporate air into our brownie because we do want that more fudgy texture. I like a fudgy, denser brownie. So we don't want them light and airy or else they wouldn't be a brownie. So here we go. There, see how the dough just came together? The batter, excuse me, I'm not baking bread, I'm making brownies. Here's the batter. Now, I have an 8x8 greased baking sheet that I'm just gonna pour my brownie batter in. Get that all in. And then I'm gonna get them into an oven and I'm gonna bake them at 300 degrees and they're gonna bake for about 30 minutes. I'm just gonna spread that evenly throughout the pan. And now they're ready to bake. Let's get them into the oven. Now that our brownies are baking in the oven, we're gonna make our espresso infused whipped cream. It's so easy. I've got my sauce pot here. I'm gonna add 1 cup of whipping cream to my pot. I have about 1/4 cup of sugar. Sweeten it up a little bit. And then I have 1 tablespoon of Italian espresso. It's instant espresso, so it's gonna instantly infuse our whipped cream. It's gonna get it all out. Then I'm gonna give this a quick little whisk so all those ingredients combine. Then I'm gonna set this on the stove and bring it to a low simmer. I don't wanna cook it too much. I just wanna melt the espresso all into that heavy whipping cream. So I got that. I'm just gonna put it on the stove to simmer. Put it on low. So once that's done simmering, I'm gonna turn off the heat and I'm gonna let it come to room temperature. And once it's at room temperature, I'm gonna place it in the refrigerator because we want it to cool, and we always wanna whip whipped cream when it's cold. That's when it whips the best. So we're just gonna get that cooling and into the fridge. Now that our brownies are cooling and finished, I'm gonna show you how to make an easy chocolate ganache to go on top. I'm gonna take heavy cream, I'm going to pour it into the bowl, and then I'm gonna get my heat on medium heat, and I'm gonna heat up that cream, and the warm cream is going to melt my chocolate. I don't want my chocolate to be in my bowl when the burner is on, because chocolate will burn really fast. So now I'm just gonna wait till my cream comes up to heat. Give it a few minutes. So while our cream is coming up to temperature, I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of corn syrup. That's gonna sweeten our ganache. And then, because we're topping our brownies with this chocolate ganache, I'm gonna add a little bit of espresso powder because we have that espresso whipped cream to accompany our brownies as well. But the good thing that I love about espresso, or I should say the amazing thing, is it pairs so well with bitter chocolate. It almost enhances it. You won't really know that it's there, but it's going to elevate that beautiful bitter dark chocolate. So now it's starting to bubble, which is what we want. I'm gonna make sure all of that espresso is nicely folded in. This is exactly where we want our cream. I'm going to take it off the heat, no more heat. Then I'm going to dump in my chocolate, get all of that in there. I'm gonna push my chocolate around so they're all coated with the cream, and I'm going to let that cream melt the chocolate. And it's going to melt it so perfectly, and you never have to worry about burning your chocolate. So now I'm going to take a whisk, and I'm just going to keep on whisking it all together to emulsify that cream into the dark chocolate. And the end result is going to be this beautiful, see how it is? It's like magic. It's going to be this beautiful, shiny sauce. It's so delicious. We're just gonna whisk a little bit more. See how that cream just instantly melted that chocolate? You didn't need any extra heat. Now, I'm gonna show you how beautiful this sauce looks. Look at this lusciousness right here. This is where it's at. Now this is what is gonna top your ice cream, your brownies, your cake. This is the stuff of goodness. I'm just gonna keep stirring it off the heat because I do wanna chill my chocolate a little bit more. So I'm going to whisk it a little bit, and you're really gonna get that emulsification going. Look at how beautiful it's becoming. Silky, smooth and so decadent. This is gonna go great on top of our brownies or ice cream or whatever we choose to use it for. There you go, look at that, beautiful. So pretty. And there you have it, my simple recipe for chocolate ganache. Now I'm gonna show you how I finally plate my brownies. But first, we're gonna make our espresso whipped cream. We made the infused cream earlier. Now, I'm just going to dump the cream into my whipping canister. And then I'm gonna add the 2 tablespoons of confectioner sugar to it, gently. Get that going in there. Perfect. Now I'm gonna seal it on up. Get this and my charger, get it on. And then gonna hear that awesome sound of it charging up. Whipped cream music right there. Give that a shake. And I'm gonna let that sit while I plate my brownies. I'm gonna cut into these bad boys. I love the corner piece because there's more crusty parts along the edges and those are my favorite. I'm just gonna grab a spatula so I can get it out. All set. And they're still really hot and delicious. Look at that, so delicious. It's almost pudding-like, it's so dense and delicious and divine. Now I'm gonna top my brownie with my ganache. It's gonna act like our frosting, a good dollop because you can never go wrong with chocolate. Now I'm gonna let you see this. It's so beautiful, too beautiful to hide. Now I'm going to top it with my espresso whipped cream. Look at that, beautiful. And garnish maybe with a little raspberry or 3 because they're so good, a little tartness never hurt. Oh, there you go. My best brownie recipe with espresso whipped cream and chocolate ganache. Thanks for watching Wilderness to Table. Come back next time for more wild recipes.